There's a specter haunting the United States.
Oh, absolutely.
This episode is all about communism.
That's right.
Spelled with a K-A at the beginning.
It's a new brand. You've heard of Marxism. You've heard of their evolution, Marxist-Leninism.
Mm-hmm.
Then there was even a Marxist-Leninism, Maoism. Mm-hmm. And we're dropping the self-aggrandizing last three names off that list. And we're just replacing the C with the K.
Exactly. Marxist-Leninism, Kamala Harrisism.
That's right.
That's where we are right now. There's a specter haunting the United States, and it's Kamala Harris. And we'll get to that a little bit later, but I'd be remiss if we didn't start off this episode by being the good little culture warriors that we are.
We have to.
And fighting back against the ceaseless tide of the woke mob.
That's what I was enlisted in the K-High for.
Yeah.
It's to fight the culture war.
And this week, Tim Walz and Kamala Harris put out a very wholesome video.
Okay.
I don't know. Did you see this? They're like interviewing each other.
The taco thing?
Yeah, you probably saw
White
the
Boy
clips
Taco
going
Tuesday,
around.
yeah.
And Tim Walz had a sort of line at the beginning where they're just like goofing around or whatever, where he said something about like, "Oh, I have white guy tacos." And now if you live in the United States and you're a member of a white family, or you're just culturally in tune, white people tacos are watered down versions of what tacos actually
Precisely,
are.
yeah. You buy some ground beef, you get the shitty Mexican seasoning, you bust that on there, grill it up, and throw it on a tortilla.
It is the prototypical ideal of stealing foods from other places and making them worse.
Exactly.
Because that's white guy taco. It's been wholly commodified. It's turned into a lesser form of itself. And Tim Walz makes a joke. He says that he has white guy tacos, and Kamala Harris responds and says, "Oh, what goes on those? Tuna and mayonnaise?" The joke being that white people don't season their food.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's like a cultural thing. You know
it's
what
funny.
I mean?
Everybody jokes like that.
And I don't know, maybe you would be surprised to find out that people on the right didn't find that joke very funny.
Oh my God.
They didn't like that. And I got a quote from Matt Walsh here that I think, I hope you didn't see this because this is a banger.
I didn't see this.
Matt Walsh said, "Crazy that a presidential candidate can just casually let out some blatant anti-white racism and nobody cares. Imagine if Donald Trump said that a black guy taco was made with fried chicken and watermelon. Nuclear meltdown."
God, you can't do that. You can't. That's not those things aren't those two statements aren't the same. They just fundamentally aren't even the same.
Again, the context here is Kamala Harris making a joke about quote unquote white guy tacos
that the white guy started.
That the white guy started, Tim Walz, by saying, "Oh, what goes on those tuna and mayonnaise?" And of course, the cultural what's relevant culturally here is that everybody just understands that white people don't season their food. Yeah. Like that's just a thing that we joke about in the United States.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
And
also, globally.
White guy tacos is just like, nobody, I feel like everybody recognizes that when the white families get together and they do their fucking taco dishes, it's not the real thing. Mm-hmm. I think that's a very real thing that people recognize. Even when you go to a Mexican restaurant, it's not what you're looking for.
Yeah, but when Matt Walsh brings up fried chicken and watermelon, it's just stereotypical racism. There's nothing that's like equivalent about those two statements. Making a joke like, "Oh, what, white people don't put any seasoning on their food," is not the same as like, "Oh, what, black people eat fried chicken and watermelon all day?"
It's like,
come on,
literally, it's not even that. It's like I'm struggling to come up with an analogy because it's like tuna and mayonnaise isn't even like a thing that like thrown on white people writ large. That's not a stereotype that's attached to white people. You know what I mean? That's not.
Well, and Tim Walz, the thing is, like, Tim Walz says, "White guy tacos. I have white guy tacos." That leaves Kamala Harris with a layup. To say 100%. Something funny, to make just a funny joke about white people.
Set up punchline. But
nobody, it's just bringing up the whole chicken and watermelons. It's racism. You know what I mean? It's just racism. And it's also a thing with like conservative quote unquote comedy where all they do is punch down at minorities. You know what I mean? And that's what this is.
Or
it's punching down.
Anytime there is like I don't even want to say slight, like a perceived slight against white people or a culturally white thing is the butt of a joke, they take it as an excuse to say, well, if the role was reversed, and then just say something racist. And just say something vile.
I know that if Donald Trump said something like that, they'd be like, "Oh, he's just joking around."
Exactly.
They would play it off even though it would be explicitly racist. It's so silly.
Just like they did when he was at the Black Journalist Conference.
Yeah, he's been calling Kamala Harris not black.
And we've been saying this for a while, ever since Kamala announced that she was going to run, which feels like a while ago, but it's only been, a month?
Yeah.
If that.
It's been like a month. I don't even think Joe Biden dropped out, like the 21st of July, so almost a month.
It's been like 3.5 weeks.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It feels like she's been running longer than that. But before that, when she was in the conversation, we were saying they aren't going to be able to help themselves.
Yeah.
And here they are, not being able to help themselves. This rhetoric is not appealing to like the average American. It can't be. It can't be.
Yeah, no, it's bad. I also want to mention in terms of the culture war, one story that really didn't get talked about nearly enough.
Yeah.
And I think this is a bit of hypocrisy on the part, maybe of the media, but certainly on conservatives. Recently, it was reported that Trump and Vance have been using Jeffrey Epstein's old plane as a campaign transportation. It's got like Trump, Vance, and stuff on it.
That's insane.
And, you can make the argument that after Jeffrey Epstein, quote unquote, took his own life, the plane was just reused, maybe some charter business.
Yeah, got it on deep discount and whatnot.
Yeah, and they started just like selling it out or renting it out to other people, whatever. But I feel like if Kamala Harris or Joe Biden or any Democrat was caught doing that, same circumstance,
end of the world,
we would not hear the end of it.
Pizzagate 2.0.
Oh my God. They would just not stop talking about it. But the fact that it's Trump and Vance, everyone's like, oh, whatever.
And it's crazy because it's like Trump's been on that plane before.
Yeah, that's like his, ninth time on the plane?
Exactly. Trump had test-driven the plane before. Yeah. He knew what he was buying.
Yeah, it's just like, I feel like if roles were reversed, oh my God, Democrats would not hear the end of it.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, no, especially when they're already being labeled as pedophile groomers for, I don't know, thinking it's okay to be gay.
Exactly. It'd be roped into the broader conspiracy about, drinking children's blood and stuff. But because it's Trump, it's perfectly fine.
Yeah, he just got it on a discount. Like, shit, you'd want one too.
He knew the owner. Like, who cares?
He'd been on that plane before. If you're going to buy a private jet, wouldn't you want one that you rode on before?
One of his friends.
Exactly. Good friend, Jeffrey Epstein.
Welcome back to Head in the Office, everybody. We're bringing you another big episode. As we said, talking about communism.
We got to
talk about communism today. And I'll say it right here, right now. If you want to support the show, head over to patreon.com/headintheofficepod. And I'll also say right now, quick announcement.
Yeah.
This is going to be commercial-free episode. And if you want commercial-free episodes going forward, you got to become a patron.
Enjoy this brief respite.
Yeah, exactly.
This rest at the bonfire.
No more skipping through ads or listening to them completely, as I know that you all do.
Yeah, please.
But if you want more episodes like this where you never have to listen to our ads or us talking about our merch or whatever else, head over to the Patreon. That's where you'll be able to get that. And supports the show. And you get early access to all the content.
Come on now. It's a winning deal all around.
Yeah.
Winning deal all around.
But we will shill a little bit. You could, of course, get some merch at headintheoffice.com. Become a patron, as I said. Follow us on the socials. Register to vote. Please. That's not even for us. That's for you.
Exactly. That's your civic duty.
That's for the health of democracy.
You want to make this a better place.
Exactly. So go ahead and register to vote. Vote.org. Links in the description, or you could go through your Secretary of State. Every state has different laws. But make sure you're registered because election coming in quick.
Exactly.
Election coming in quick.
Please.
You could also leave a 5-star review on Apple if you want to support the show. We've got a couple of them today. The first one here is by Joa Bear, best political podcast out there. They say, to start, I condemn Hamas. Listening to Hiddo is the highlight of my week. In a world full of idiotic and tasteless news outlets, the Hiddo guys are a diamond in the rough. Hearing the news from like-minded leftists is a breath of fresh air amidst the smog that is non-independent journalism. I love the way that this show makes the news/politics fun and engaging. Being able to belly laugh while listening to a show about politics is not an experience that I get from any other outlets. That I know that's true. While I am currently stuck in the position of a lowly Wednesday weenie, I have plans to change that very soon. Thank you, boys, for providing us with fun, informative, and entertaining content on a weekly basis.
Excellent. What else could we do? Frankly, it's a calling.
I did notice that they didn't condemn political violence, though.
I noticed that too, and
I'm nervous.
Frankly, I'm disturbed.
That's concerning. Looking into this.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to have to refer this to some higher authorities because, this next review, I love rewarding bad behavior by ZK Attack 13. I'm out here shouting from the rooftops that I condemn Hamas and all political violence because of you guys. That's us. That's us. We're inspiring this change within the youth.
That's me.
Because of you guys specifically. And no other factors whatsoever. Your unhumble begging and guilt tripping got me to leave a review purely to cleanse my soul.
Exactly.
Seriously though, seeing two young white boys have actually good takes on politics and deliver the otherwise generally awful news in a comedic and informative way has made this my favorite podcast. I live in a liberal hellscape, Massachusetts, but my family is fully far-right conservative. Rest in peace. And it makes life genuinely awful most of the time. Listening to this and having my Feeble, malleable brain folded by two hosts. Fuck. Guys, I can't read. This has been a long-running thing. Listening to this and having my feeble, malleable brain folded to host the woke mind virus has been incredibly helpful in getting me through my week. Keep up the good work, boys.
Oh my God, we are just drilling the woke mind virus into those.
They really do love it when we beg. They really do love it when we beg, and I might have to withhold that.
Oh
yeah,
I'm gonna take away what you guys want the most. The last one here is by by Spartan in Tampa. There it is. Yeah. There's the author line. Great perspective. They say, I was turned on to your podcast by my Gen Z son.
Oh.
I am firmly in Gen X. I'm a very moderate voter and appreciate your perspective on politics. Plus, love that you guys are Spartans. Go green, blue dot, and a red state. Only one of us is Spartan. Don't lump me in with them.
Oh, now one.
With those people.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
You're a very moderate voter. Maybe Kamala Harris can turn you with her communism.
Exactly.
To the more extreme side
maybe
of
Kamala
politics.
Harris can turn you into a far left, progressive Stalinist.
Or maybe, as we'll talk about, all the right wingers calling her a communist have no idea what they're talking about.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But we love to see hit a horizontal integration throughout the 18 to 25 demographic has just been it's been a wonderful thing to see. And I love the vertical integration throughout the family unit.
That's right. Bring them in. Bring them in.
Come on. There's no reason to not capture just all of this. We are monopolizing both markets, both axes of
and
power.
that's communism. Exactly.
This is a command economy.
Let's get on to some election news. And I'll start off with a question I ask you, dear listener. What would you do during election season without Hito's watchful eye?
That's what I'm saying. I frankly, I'd be lost.
You wouldn't know what to do. We are just observing politics as it happens and giving you the objective news. And coming up this week after we record, of course, is the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, with speeches from plenty of different major figures in the Democratic Party over the course of several days. I don't think it'll be as fun as what we saw at the RNC, because it literally never is. But that's coming up, so we won't be covering that this episode because it hasn't happened yet.
Unfortunately.
For us.
It starts on, Monday at like 7?
Tomorrow, yeah.
Oh, man. That's
Yeah.
upsetting, actually.
And
that's just another reason why you should go check out the Patreon to get the Sunday sermon.
Yeah.
Never miss a news cycle.
And I do know that there's going to be pro-Palestinian protesters there, almost certainly, which is a good thing. Yeah. They should definitely be there to protest. But I am interested to see how Kamala Harris and others will react to the DNC maybe being halted or disrupted in some way.
I know we talked about last week how Kamala Harris had that awful moment in Detroit when dealing with protesters. What we didn't talk about, because I didn't fucking know about it, was that same thing happened in Arizona, handled so much better. She handled it so much better. I have more confidence in her ability to kind of like a message around that. But what I do not have confidence in is the ability of every other Democrat to message around that.
Yeah, Tim Walz would probably do a fine job. But then you got people like Joe Biden who will be giving a speech at the DNC for some reason.
Scared.
Put him to bed.
I'm saying lock him away. He already said he doesn't want to do any events past 8 p.m. The DNC starts at 7. Let's not make him do this.
Yeah, Barack Obama will be giving a speech there. I wonder how he'll speak to the pro-Palestine protesters. And there's going to be a number of other people there as well. Yeah, worrying.
So let me be clear. We learned a lot from my war on terror.
Yeah, exactly. Let's get into some policy.
Yes, we had some policy come out this week, folks. You'll love to see it.
Yeah, and I heard from it first. I heard about it first on Twitter when everyone was fear-mongering about it. That's
exactly how I heard about it, too.
Before she had fully announced the policy, it was just like in the news reported that she was going to touch on a couple of things that we'll get into. And here I thought Mao had been resurrected. I thought we were making landlords face the wall.
I'm saying.
You can imagine my disappointment. So one piece of news last week was these new policy proposals from Kamala Harris that we got as we head into the DNC. The first one we should talk about is the anti-price gouging policy. This one has had just a monumental amount of misinformation about it.
Oh, absolutely.
People just explicitly lying not only about the policy, but also about like the words that she was saying about it.
And it's hard to see because I do think genuinely conservatives did kind of capture the moment on this one and capture the rhetoric on this one as conservative economists have come out and CNN has platformed them uncritically. I saw a video of Kevin O'Leary, the fucking Shark Tank guy.
Yes.
Getting on CNN and he's like, no, this is absolutely ridiculous, communism, whatnot. He was also talking about the real estate policy, we'll say. He's like, this isn't going to help anyone. This isn't going to do anything. I'm an investor. at that point, you should tune out anyway, because he does
not a real job.
He does not have a real estate investor too. He does not have your best interest in mind at all. He's like, I do real estate. I know. It's like, you do real estate on the other side.
Yeah.
CNN's uncritically platforming these people. I'm learning about this because conservatives are yapping on Twitter, and it's unfortunate that they're controlling the narrative.
Yeah, and it's also like, since like Reagan and even a little bit before, the economist that we think of, like the mythical sort of prototypical idea of an economist,
the Chicago School economist,
are the people that are platformed by massive corporations like CNN and other corporations that serve to benefit from right-wing economic analysis.
It's always interesting to read these articles about like, oh, economist responds to this, and it's whenever it's a right-wing position or framed from a right-wing lens, it's economist responds. But if there's any counter messaging from other equally qualified economists, it's economists with progressive think tanks thinks this. It's never Heritage Foundation economist or economist at, I don't know, the Chicago School who's always wrong.
Republican-funded economist.
Republican-funded economist thinks this.
There's tons of like left-wing or even just like Keynesian or liberal economists that would offer a less, I don't know, what's the word? I don't know, just like flashy explanation of these policies, but they're not the ones that get paid the big bucks.
Yeah, we'll get into it in a second, but it's like these economists come out here and they offer arguments completely from theory without any, like, none of these things are rooted in the actual material experience of people. It's the theory of the economy, how they've studied it, and it's always centered around, well, efficiency.
Yes.
Without actually being centered on the human experience. It's kind of the biggest issue with the field in of itself.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, they get the added benefit of defending the status quo.
Yeah.
Which, like, the status quo is the easiest thing to imagine because it's right there, right in front of you.
And it's been built to defend itself.
Exactly. Yeah, it's right there in front of you. You can defend its existence because it exists right now. It's always an uphill battle for people that want to imagine a better future, and there's always going to be the naysayers that are platformed by wealthy interests whose interests would be attacked by the people who want to make the world a better place. But let's get into the anti-price gouging policy because it's not really that deep.
Yeah.
It's actually pretty surface level and not even uncommon in the country that we live in right now. So last week, Kamala Harris introduced a anti-price gouging policy that was decried by conservatives almost immediately as Marxist-Leninist communism.
Yes.
For reasons we'll get into, that's not what this is. The policy specifically is targeting grocery prices, as Harris acknowledged that although inflation's returned to normal levels, which is true, it's at like 2% or 3% or something like that, prices are still higher than they were a few years ago because although the rate of inflation has slowed down, that doesn't mean the prices have gone back down.
Yes.
Which is unfortunate.
Things are
sticky.
Expensive. They're just not getting more expensive.
Hard to imagine things getting less expensive.
Exactly.
Ever.
I actually can't.
Imagine your landlord hitting you up and being like, yeah, rent's going to go down next year.
Guys, we had a great year this year. Record profits from your money that you paid to me, the 60% of your income that you paid to me in rent. So I'm actually lowering it to 55.
I know I still haven't fixed the faucet, but...
Exactly. You know, actually, because I've been lacking on these maintenance issues, I'm going to give you a discount on next month's rent.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen.
Hard to imagine that happening. But Kamala Harris's policy would enable the FTC to, quote, penalize big corporations that engage in price spikes, and it singles out a lack of competition in the meatpacking industry for driving up meat prices. Now, to be clear, and this is the very important part that I want you all to keep in mind as we continue, this policy targets price spikes.
Yes.
This does not set a threshold beyond which you cannot raise prices.
Yes.
It targets price spikes specifically during times of emergencies because the whole context here is that prices spiked up during record profits during a pandemic.
Yes.
Which is the price gouging aspect of all of it.
It's not even about just like regular price gouging under the guise of inflation. It is explicitly framed within the context of an emergency, like COVID, something once in a century pandemic type deal.
It's also in the context, I think, wasn't it 2022? There was like a whole avian flu crisis that people were freaking out about. And some of these big companies that produce eggs and sell eggs were saying like, oh, we got to turn up the egg price because we're being impacted by the avian flu crisis that's happening right now. Then later on, it was found out that they didn't have any instances of avian flu. They just raised the prices because they knew everyone was freaking out.
Crazy. Sounds like there should be a penalty levied against that for anti-consumer behavior.
You shouldn't be able to just lie and then steal money from people. You know what I mean?
You should
it's
not be
fair.
able to take the trust of the public during a national emergency or what could become a national emergency and use that to extract more money from them. That is not a policy that should ever be accepted.
Now, Donald Trump, despite this clarity on the policy that it is targeting price spikes, it is not price controls, as we'll get into. Trump has already said Kamala Harris will implement Soviet-style price controls. And now when I first heard of this, of course, as I mentioned at the top, I had heard of this policy through right-wing Twitter.
Yes.
So I had already thought that Kamala Harris literally said, we're going to implement price controls for groceries.
Yeah, milk $2.50, that's all it'll ever be.
That was my framework. That was my framework for seeing this policy to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And now my immediate response was like, okay, yeah, price controls can be pretty bad.
Yeah.
Because it is true in a capitalist economy that if you set price controls, if you set the price ceiling so low beyond the point which companies can't make a profit from production anymore, they'll just stop doing it because there's no profit to be made. You're only losing money. But to be clear, none of this is actual price control policy. It is anti-price gouging policy. And after some very cursory research, within my first 30 minutes of looking at this, I found that 37 states already have some kind of anti-price gouging policy. For example, California has up to 1 year in jail and $10,000 in fines for raising prices more than 10% after a declared state of emergency. If that's too liberal for you, California. Florida has up to $25,000 in fines for selling essential commodities at a price, quote, grossly exceeding average prices after a state of emergency is declared. And in Texas, you can get up to $250,000 in fines if, after a declared state of emergency, you sell or lease, quote, fuel, food, medicine, or another necessity at an exorbitant or excessive price. These laws already exist.
Exactly.
This isn't new. It's just adding a federal framework for it.
And people who are sane don't get upset at things existing, because a lot of these like state level laws exist in the context of, like, say in Florida or Texas, hurricanes. Mm-hmm. After hurricanes come, or when a hurricane is announced, a Cat 5 hurricane is going to run through this neighborhood, run through this place, it's going to be pretty bad. People used to go and buy up all of the generators at local hardware stores and then sell them back to people who are desperate and hungry and cold because their house was just wrecked by a hurricane at exuberant 5,000% markups.
Yes.
And we recognize collectively as a society that that's not good. You shouldn't be able to do anything like that. If a person can't do it, if it is immoral when one person does it, I would argue that it is definitely immoral when some amorphous conglomerate of people go and decide they're going to do it on an even bigger scale.
Yes, exactly.
Uncontroversially.
Yeah.
Unless you're libertarian.
Yeah, and it's funny because that, like, an individual going out and buying all the generators right after a hurricane hit, like, that is a function of the free market. You know what I mean? Like, that's them expressing their economic freedom and doing that and shaking down everybody else that needs generators now. But we recognize that is such bad behavior, such harmful behavior, that it's okay if the government intervenes and says you can't do that.
Yeah, sometimes the free market should not be, like, absolutely free.
I would say many times.
Many times.
Rarely should it be.
Many times there are ways that you can take that framework and you can do bad things with it, and the role of government should be to step in and stop that.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to say next, is like the underlying assumption here is that any form of government intervention is communism, because they've been saying this anti-price gouging policy is necessarily communism. It's a form of price control, which it isn't, but they think that that's what that is. But we already regulate things like price fixing. You can't collude with other corporations and raise the prices and form a sort of quasi-monopoly. You can't do insider trading, at least well, you can do it in Congress, but you can't do it elsewhere, at least theoretically. It's the same shit. You're banning an unfair practice for the protection of consumers. It's a form of government intervention, but it's still very much capitalism. It's still private ownership of productive property for the sake of accumulating profit. This is not communism.
Yeah.
It's silly to label it communism.
I can't stand I don't even want to say it's rhetorical drift that's happened around the term of communism, because since the Cold War, we've labeled communism as anything and anything that we don't want, or
literally
could
everything.
Be labeled as anti-freedom. So I just can't stand the tendency to do this, and the tendency of just people to take it seriously.
Yeah.
They're not talking seriously when they say that. Like, is it communism? Could you go to your MAGA uncle or father or aunt or whatever and say, is it communism when somebody is stopped from buying up all of the bottles of water before a hurricane and selling them for $10 a pop to desperate people?
Yeah.
It's not. It's just a good thing.
Every form of government intervention is communism until it's been like 2 decades and everyone realizes that was a good idea.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, people called seatbelt laws communism. You know what I mean?
People called anti-drunk driving laws communism.
Yeah, no, it's absurd. Now, the key motivator behind this policy is this idea that corporations, especially meat companies with a near monopoly on the market, increase prices beyond what was necessary to offset for the increases in production costs during the pandemic, which is absolutely true. But my issue with policies like this is it doesn't really get at the underlying issue, which is private ownership of these massive essential production fields. You know what I mean?
Food damn near inelastic.
Yeah, well, no, and it is, and that's the thing is when we're talking about inelastic goods, when we're talking about these commodities that are so important that people will pay literally anything, and price gouging is a thing that can happen during emergencies, they just shouldn't be commodities.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? One, because it almost guarantees some people won't be able to afford it. In some cases, a lot of people, if we're talking about like healthcare. But also, two, I just feel like people shouldn't be able to profit off of our essential needs as human beings.
Exactly.
And, maybe that is a communist idea, but I think it's a defensible one.
Mm-hmm.
So.
There's also this fact kind of like just like underscoring inflation, right? Like you can have this argument where it's like, okay, yes, the cost of goods, the cost of inputs increased. What companies need to actually produce their goods increased. They need to offset those prices to maintain acceptable margins, whatever, or just maintain their production field.
Yes.
But as we saw during COVID, there were record profits. I can be sympathetic to the idea that the inflation that was created from this accounts for these record profits as the value of the dollar is lessened and you need more to do the same amount of things. There's an analysis that you can do. You can look at rates of inflation. You can understand that and apply that to how much profits increase to say, okay, how much of this increased profits is derived from the value of the dollar going down, and how much of it is derived by the guise of inflation giving corporations plausible deniability to increase the price of their products. And even that in of itself is a hard thing to look at, because inflation is calculated by looking at a market basket of goods that they are responsible for putting out into the market. Food is an essential market basket good. You cannot calculate inflation rates without thinking about prices of milk, eggs, meat, and whatnot. And when they can say there's going to be inflation, we got to increase prices, they're increasing inflation.
Yeah.
They are just doing that.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's one of the things I wanted to bring up, is the way that we measure inflation itself is not objective.
Yeah.
Like, we are selecting items out in the market. And of course, it's important to measure how the price increases of things like food, essential items. I think vehicles is often a part of the market basket.
Vehicles, electronics, some things. It's just what the general consumer would purchase.
The other thing I wanted to mention is, like, everybody, all the conservatives blame government spending for inflation that happened after the pandemic, but government spending is just one explanation. It can be the case that if the government sends too much money into the economy, especially doing so without any strategy behind it, it can cause inflation. But there's also a war in Europe, which put a lot of strain on different supply lines. Supply chains were breaking down. There was that one time when that giant fucking boat was in the Suez Canal.
Oh my God, I know.
That blocked like trillions of dollars of goods from traveling over, a week or whatever
There's
it was.
also shipping from China became so fucking expensive during the pandemic. Shipping was absolutely, not only was it backed up, so goods were just taking longer to get here, but it was just so much more money than it was pre-pandemic. And we're still feeling the effects of that.
And computer chips from Taiwan were simply just not coming in, which caused the price of a lot of modern cars to spike up quite a bit. And of course, corporations were price gouging.
Yes.
Right? There's a lot. It is inflation is an overdetermined thing. To blame it solely on government intervention is silly, especially when we're talking about an anti-price gouging policy. I don't see any world where that could cause inflation. You're literally penalizing for price increases.
Especially an anti-price gouging policy that is not just general price gouging is outlawed, but in the time of an emergency, you cannot excessively punish the consumer for you taking advantage of their trust.
Yeah, exactly.
I frankly just don't trust corporations to act in good faith. I do not trust a entity that solely exists to make profit and give money to its investors and make them more money and profit more, to not take an opportunity to profit more. Like, that's just, that doesn't make sense.
And the leftist analysis here, at least when it comes to corporations, is like, price gouging in and of itself isn't like price gouging itself is sort of a part of the system, right?
Yes.
Like, the point of capitalism, the point of owning property, is to profit as much as possible. It's to accumulate. Like, that's the point. You have no legal responsibility to be a good person while you do it. So price gouging would, to a lot of people, just be like savvy entrepreneurship.
100%. And that's what people say who go and defend the guys who, after Katrina, bought up all the water bottles.
Yes.
They're just being opportunistic. They're just taking advantage. If they're willing to pay for the water bottles, they're willing to pay for them. So why not sell them to them?
And like I said at the top, like, the idea that price controls can lower the available or the legal price of things below the point, or below the cost of production, in such a way that it's no longer profitable. There's no longer an incentive to make certain products is true. But if it is the case that these essential resources have the option to be price gougeable, if you will, then I don't think they should be commodities at all.
Yeah.
They should just be things that we provide in common. Think of like the Postal Service, you know what I mean? That's an example of an agency that operates pretty efficiently, that honestly needs a lot more funding, but comes at little cost. When you actually use the service. Or public schools, for example. Sure, there's some money you got to put into like field trips and stuff like that, but for the most part, it's free at the point of service. I see no reason why things like like basic food provisions, housing, transportation costs, and other essential services, I see no reason why we don't treat those as decommodified goods as well, because you need them to survive.
Yeah.
And if they aren't decommodified, if they are things to be bought and sold, then people will sell them as at a price as high as they can possibly get, because people will pay anything for them.
I mean, corporations exist to price gouge.
Exactly.
Right? This is just regulating what is excessive or not.
Yeah.
And I think that's completely fine. And I kind of want to take this to kind of shift gears and talk about how economists have responded to this as platformed by CNN, and just read you an excerpt from here, because I feel like this highlights this general issue of a lot of these economists, I'll say right-wing economists too, or maybe centrist neoliberal economists, are applying this theory that's just not based in any material reality that people focus. It's just theory for the sake of theory without praxis, if you will. And me, I'm a materialist. I value the experience of people on the ground. I don't care for nebulous theories if they can't actually do anything to address issues.
I touch the grass outside.
I do.
Feel the sun on my skin.
I love it. I bask in its warmth. You know what I'm saying? And these guys could use a little bit more of that. And here's this excerpt from CNN. It starts here. Gavin Roberts studied anti-price gouging laws some states passed during the pandemic. One of the biggest effects he observed, especially at grocery stores, was that these laws motivated people, quote, to go buy more goods than they would if prices had risen.
The horror.
Oh my God. In other words, people bought food because they could afford to buy food. What the fuck is the problem with that, dog? Like, that's such an out of touch position. I can't even wrap my head around it, but it continues. When prices are high, in most cases, the best policy action in response is actually taking no action. Roberts, the chair of Weber State University's economics department, told CNN that would cause consumers who are deterred by, say, higher prices of beef to instead purchase another type of meat or protein. That helps keep beef on grocery store shelves for people who want it enough to pay the higher prices. This is an argument derived from the theory of supply and demand, not the actual practice behind it, and with no consideration but for just people and their experiences with fucking food. Oh, you need protein, but beef, you got to pay $20 for one chicken breast? Rice and beans.
Yeah, buy
rice
something
and beans,
else,
brother. What are you talking about? I feel like
damn near un-American right there.
That's what I'm saying. I feel like it should be a wholly uncontroversially American position. Reach across both aisles to say that every American family should be able to afford a fucking hamburger.
Hamburgers for all, baby. Universal hamburgers.
And we could do that. We could do that. It's not like...
Socialized hamburgers. Come on now.
Conservatives love to say, they love to get in the culture, the battlefields of the culture war, the war I'm fighting so hard in the K-Hive, and say that Democrats are trying to take away your hamburgers when they want to do something like, say, the Green New Deal. That never got passed, by the way, but they like to pretend it was. They love to say Democrats are trying to take meat away from you. Yet they use these theory-driven arguments to say that actually you shouldn't have a hamburger.
Yeah.
It's conservatives that don't want you to eat beef.
And it is telling that when it comes to high prices, the solution is either prices remain high and a lot of consumers suffer because they can either buy less or can't buy the food that they actually want, or the Fed raises interest rates, which means unemployment goes up.
Yeah.
And people suffer that way. Like the
And
only...
raising interest rates is the same principle as this, too. You raise interest rates to stop people from going and buying cars or buying homes to free up supply.
Yeah, it stops... It makes it so banks can't borrow money as easily from the Fed, which means businesses aren't getting started, which means employment is decreasing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's at least the basic monetary theory behind it. But it is interesting that the only solution here is either, again, prices stay high or unemployment goes up, both of which hurt the working class. We do nothing, though, to restrict the power of corporations, who are often the ones that put us in this position to begin with. The working class always bears the brunt of economic downturns. Meanwhile, corporations and banks get bailed out every single time.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me how we displace all of the pain and suffering onto the workers of the country.
And it's also interesting to see how that kind of the debt cycle has sort of played out recently. When you say the banks and the corporations are constantly bailed out on the backs of the consumer, when our whole entire entire system is built on these periods of upturn and downturn, right? And the downturn is necessary in the system that we have built right now. And corporations need to feel that downturn because that is what's supposed to create room for new players to enter the field. When Tyson never has to like feel the downturn from their meat monopoly or whatnot because they're going to be bailed out, or the banks or the auto industry or anything, no competitors can rise in the field.
Yeah.
These corporations do need to fail so that capitalism can work if you actually want it to work.
Yeah, and that's wholly a capitalist analysis.
That is rooted in the principles of capitalism as Adam fucking Smith laid them out.
But the issue is that these corporations are now so enormous that if they do fall, like millions of people die.
Exactly,
You know
and
what I
you
mean?
can't have that.
Exactly.
So-
Like these corporations, we cannot allow them to collapse because they have so much power and so much control over the resources we need to survive. Again, I'll say it: if these commodities that these corporations control are so important, it should not be left up to the free market and private actors to distribute them.
Exactly.
They should be owned in common by the people, controlled by a government that is, again, democratically controlled by the people. It shouldn't be a private thing.
And if these corporations are too big to fail, these entities, conglomerates, whatever, are too big to fail, and the government has to step in to keep them alive, you've broken capitalism. You fundamentally cannot have any meaningful competition because no competition can thrive when these corporations become so big, like Walmart and Amazon, and can price literally everyone out of the market just because of economies of scale.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. Your system can't function as you say it should.
Yeah, well, and that's besides the point that, like, this is what capitalism does, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the tendency towards monopoly is a process that is embedded within the system of capitalism. The best way to win in the market is devour your competitor. And if you would devour enough competitors, you become either an oligarch or you have a monopoly over the industry. Yeah. There's no way to stop that other than through state intervention, which is labeled as communism.
I like, we're not being serious. And it's like, this is wholly, these state interventions are capitalist prescriptions for capitalist problems.
Yes.
I'm not suggesting socialism when I say that we should let some corporations fail so that new players can enter the market. I'm suggesting an argument derived from Adam Smith as he laid out capitalism, man. Like, come on.
Yeah, like, the invisible hand, where's it at?
The system would work better if we did it that way. But what we're doing now, it's just not working. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't believe in the principles of supply and demand, because, like, ultimately I do. I do believe that there is some give to say when it comes to these economist arguments about, like, okay, some items are becoming more expensive. You just got to suck it up in consumers. You won't be able to buy these right now. Some people will be willing to pay the higher prices. That's fine. But this is in the context of price gouging. This is in the context of situations that are so egregious that we come together and recognize that they are solely taking advantage of consumers more than the acceptable level.
Yeah. And
That's what this is about.
The economy's real.
The economy is real. Yeah, you have to kind of contend with it as it exists right now. But just finishing off this excerpt I wanted to read from the CNN article. And while Harris claims her proposal, quote, will help the food industry become more competitive, Roberts said it would do just the opposite. Quote, it's more likely to maintain that status quo, he said, because it would keep new competition from moving in to take advantage of bigger profit margins. Competition that could have helped lower prices in the long run. As we just talked about, that doesn't fucking happen.
Yeah.
People, there's like, what, 3 companies that control the entire meat industry? It's like Tyson, something else, and then something else.
Yeah.
You are not going to have a humble mom and pop supplier breed and slaughter enough cows to supply Walmart with meat. That is not something that can happen. Yeah. Not only because Tyson is too big, not only because these distributors are too big, but anywhere that could sell them is too big to do contracts with them. We live in a system in this country where all these no mom and pop can compete with a national chain and a multinational chain. It's not fundamentally possible.
Without themselves becoming one of these massive conglomerates.
Exactly. Yeah. And when was the last time you actually saw a corporation rise up and say, no, Tyson, your meat is too expensive, or no, X Monopoly, your meat is becoming too expensive. The average consumer is priced out. I'm going to come in and I'm going to offer a cheaper alternative and succeed. When has that actually happened? Other than Amazon, massive multinational corporation, damn near the biggest multinational corporation, Mr. Capitalism, coming in and seeing small businesses come up on Amazon, sell things on their storefront. and then price them out of the competition and do basically a fucking hostile takeover of their business. They did it with diapers.com. They did it with fucking books. Their whole business model has relied on, we're going to price you out and you're never going to be able to do anything again.
And it's like, even if we're talking about grocery stores, which has also been like the industry of focus for this conversation, it's like, yeah, you can't just start a grocery store and compete with Walmart. Maybe on a local level, like you could be a regional powerhouse in the grocery market if you set up in like Detroit or something like that, you know what I mean? But in terms of reaching the amount of coverage that Walmart has for the entire country, you know, it's not going to happen.
And it's like even just reaching the amount of variety that Walmart has and reaching the prices.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing. Walmart's got the money to burn. Like, you're never going to undercut them.
Exactly. They have the economies of scale.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. I get my fucking groceries from Walmart. It's cheaper. When I can, I'll go to Walmart and get the 99-cent veggies. They're $1.50 at Meijer.
Yeah.
Like, and that makes sense for consumers. So, but in that environment, you can't have. It's silly to pretend that other competitors, smaller competitors, actually can rise. They can be the cream that rises to the top without themselves becoming Mr. Evil Big Multinational Corporation.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. I've already said a few times, like, things should just be decommodified. But when the government or the state just takes control of these, again, essential industries, the government is the only real entity that can sustainably operate in the red. The government doesn't need to make profit, right? In a capitalist economy, if you want to produce something, you have to do so while making profit. Otherwise, you can't do it for very long.
Yes.
The government can just collect taxes, preferably on the richest people in the country, and they can sustain providing services while running in the red, or, again, preferably breaking even. And, you know, they can sell things like the USPS sells stamps, you know what I mean? Or if we're talking like state governments, they'll collect tolls on toll roads if you don't live in the state or something like that. But the government can provide these services, these essential services for everybody at minimal cost up front by us paying into a collective pot. And when it's something important as groceries, as being able to nourish your body, I feel like we as a society, as a country, should be okay with everyone paying a little more into a collective pot so we all get a lot more back in return.
And we should also be okay with inefficiencies, because a lot of these pure supply demand arguments that these economists put out, I saw a lot of videos talking about, like, oh, well, when not even price controls are instituted, but things like this happen, you create dead zones within the supply and demand curve. Okay.
Well, yeah,
that's fucking fine if there are a couple inefficiencies if people can eat. If every American can get a hamburger, that's fine. If there's some inefficiencies.
That also presupposes that we don't have a massive amount of inefficiencies right fucking now.
Exactly.
Like, the problems that people often describe when it comes to decommodification of, say, housing, for example, exist right now. They'd be like, oh, well, if the government controls housing, you won't get to decide where you live. Motherfucker, I can't decide where I live right now.
Oh my God,
you think I could move to New York if I wanted to? I couldn't afford it. What are we talking about? Like, it doesn't make any goddamn sense. It's just like, when it comes to civilization, let's say, there's always going to be issues to deal with. When we talk about decommodification or even the scary mythical communism, that's not a solution to all human problems. We're proposing a better system that will still have problems to tackle. Things will go wrong. People will make mistakes. People will get lazy. People will be incompetent. But that also describes people operating in this system right now. I think a more democratic organization where everyone at least gets basic provisions given to them, whether it's food or housing or whatever else, I think that's a far better system than what we have right now, where we got economists arguing maybe Americans shouldn't be able to afford burger.
Exactly.
That's ridiculous.
Maybe you should just have to subsist off like 98-cent pack of ramen. That's what you get.
Everyone's in college now.
Exactly. You're all struggling college students.
Moving off of groceries, though, Kamala Harris also had some other policy issues that she wanted to bring up this past week. On housing, she introduced a new housing policy. And I'll say, before we even get into the policy specifically, housing, probably like the #1 economic issue.
It's got to be.
If you broke down the economy by issue, like probably number one.
Yeah, absolutely. It's either this or groceries.
Yeah. Because people can't afford rent. I can't afford rent. And also, if you're looking to buy a home, people can't really do that either.
Exactly.
Like, housing is an enormous burden on a lot of people right now. And economists like the one you just read off are like, well, maybe people shouldn't be able to get nice apartments.
Yeah, but you don't get it because they can't afford it, so they should just settle for the shitbox with a community bathroom. Like they're living in college. Everyone should be a college student.
Yeah. The quote from BBC on this policy is, quote, the campaign's proposals include a first ever tax credit for builders of homes sold to first-time buyers, as well as up to $25,000 in down payment assistance for eligible first-time buyers, a move that her campaign estimated could reach 4 million households over 4 years. Somewhere else, she also is committing to building 3 million new homes over the course of 4 years, which all of this is good stuff, is basic, like, liberal economic populism, but again, doesn't really get down to the issue that, like, one, housing shouldn't be a commodity to begin with, and also, it's all kind of just focused on, like, home ownership shit, you know, like traditional family homes. I think maybe as a country we should focus more on efficient housing models, specifically for renters, because a lot of people rent.
Exactly. Yeah, guys, I rent. I'm renting right now, and all I know is my rent is higher than my cousin's mortgage for his 3-bedroom house.
Well, and more importantly, I think that I don't even think that you could argue a majority of the country, once we get past the sort of like social programming, actually want to live in like a suburban area with a lawn and a picket fence. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to live like that.
Renting should be a viable option.
Yes.
If you want to just kind of if you want to live your life that way, you should be able to do that without having to face these massive negative effects, without having to worry about like all this generational wealth and whatnot. And it shouldn't be cost prohibitive to do either.
Yeah, it's just like we're sort of sold growing up that like you should want, or it's ideal to have like the basic family unit in suburban America.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like this is, and it's, you know, coded in various racial undertones and stuff like that. But that's the sort of message that's sold, is like you should strive for home ownership in suburban America. But I think if we weren't sold that, I think a lot less people would be looking to live that way.
Exactly.
And people would be a lot more interested in a version of decommodified housing in, you know, more urban populated areas. Because that's where everything happens, by the way.
Exactly. And it just sucks because they're kind of right. Like, home ownership is the ideal because that is the only way to build actual intergenerational wealth. That is the only way to not have your money kind of be wasted, is to put equity down on a home. Because when you're just renting, it's just going away. Like,
you're just losing money.
There is merit to it being financially smarter to be like a homeowner, but it's like we should rebalance those scales. You know what I mean?
And it's like, I don't, at least at the point I'm at in my life right now, like, I don't want to live in suburbia.
Exactly. I don't know where I'm going to be in 5 years.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to have a home there.
I don't want to be tied down to one place for 30 years.
Yeah.
And I don't want to have to go through the hassle of trying to sell a house and do whatnot. I can save that shit for my 30s and 40s.
Not to mention that you can't afford it right now.
Not to mention that even if I wanted to, I absolutely would be prohibited from doing that. Oh, my goodness.
So I think it's good that Kamala Harris is trying to address housing concerns, although, you know, building more homes or having the homes directed more towards first-time buyers, like, that stuff is good, but I think we could go further. Maybe she's holding back the real Kamala-unism for later. I don't know.
Yeah, I hope so. I will say, I think the committing to building like more homes is the more effective policy.
Yeah.
I would like to see if she's talking about single-family homes or multifamily housing units.
It's almost guaranteed that it's single-family homes, right?
Yeah, that sucks, though.
Yes, it does.
That's not
it's
the issue.
inefficient.
The root of the issue within the housing market right now is the supply of housing. Building more housing will help that. But you know what's going to help it quicker? Building multifamily housing units. The issue with the market right now is NIMBYism. It's suburbanites not wanting apartment complexes being built in or around their neighborhoods because it would lower their property values, maybe even temporarily.
And it's also the fact that real estate companies, these massive landlords, just buy up a bunch of housing and hold it until they think they can sell it at the highest price.
Speculative real estate
should be illegal, by the way, or there should be like a 90% vacancy tax after a year of holding it.
Talk about anti-consumer behavior.
Because so many people are in the market for a home, but they can't afford it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the $25,000 for down payments is like the best populist thing that she's doing there.
I think
other than the homes being built.
I think it's the most populist thing that she's doing. I think it's the flashiest thing that she's doing, but I think it's the least effective thing out of all these policies. $25,000 to first-time home buyers is a lot. It's cool. It is good, but you have to consider that if you're competing against other first-time home buyers for these homes, there is an argument that I'm, what's it called? That I'm like, I could believe.
Sympathetic to?
I'm sympathetic to that. If everybody has an extra $25,000 to go towards a home, nobody has an extra $25,000.
Yeah, sure.
You know what I mean? The fundamental issue should be about building multifamily housing units. It should be about just fucking eliminating NIMBYism and getting these prices down.
Yeah, and not letting landlords come in and just buy everything.
Yes, and as the price of home ownership goes down, the price of renting goes down too, as more people will prefer to, again, put equity into something that you can own and build that intergenerational wealth, and then I can chill in my fucking rented apartment.
Yeah.
Because that's what I want to do.
Yeah, where's my $25,000?
That's
for
the
renters.
other thing too.
Yeah.
There's so much incentive. I don't get any boosts.
Yeah.
I think a more effective home ownership policy like that is what I think Joe Biden did when he lowered the amount that you need to put down on as a down payment for first-time home buyers, like making it easier for first-time home buyers to qualify for loans, lower down payments. But again, the fundamental issue here is zoning laws.
I think Joe Biden also said something, and I imagine Kamala Harris would pick this up. He said something about limiting rent increases to 5% year over year.
God, wouldn't that be great?
Which is good, but still, like, it's the issue with inflation as well. Like, the prices are too high right now.
Yeah.
Like, rent eats up like 60% of my budget each month. It's ridiculous.
It's absurd. It's an entire paycheck.
Yes.
Like, I can't function like this long term.
And like, I feel like I got it good compared to what a lot of people deal with. Like, rent's crazy.
Exactly. It's fucked up out here. Yeah. It's fucked up out here.
The issue is NIMBYism and these massive companies just being able to buy up all the single family homes and like the apartment complexes and stuff, which Kamala Harris said she does want to address, but I think it needs to be like offensive and aggressive towards these real estate people, because they should not be able to come in, speculate on these homes and apartments and so on until they are finally ready to sell this at the highest possible price or rent it at the highest possible price.
You know, on principle, NIMBY should not be taken seriously.
Yeah.
I'm sympathetic to the idea that they do have a lot of like wealth and value tied up in these homes. Say most people are refinancing their house to do whatever. They lose out on that equity if their property values go down, but like people need to live. I'm losing out on hella paying too damn much for rent. And you know, even if rents are capped at 5% increase each year, at the job I'm working at right now, I get like 3% raise each year. So it's like I'm still being fucked out of the market. You know, I still can't do anything. The raise that I'm getting this year after working for a year is enough to cover maybe what my rent will increase to and what my other like bills are increasing, because my internet's going up, everything else is going up. Like, man, what am I doing?
Oh,
like,
dog, I'm mortified for when my lease is due next year. And I got to think about what rent's going to increase to. I'm terrified.
I have no idea, and there's been no my lease is up in like November. No communication on like whether or not like the increase is going to be X amount, 10, 15%. I'm hoping for like $100, like conservatively, but it could be more.
And that's crazy. $100 more a month.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
That's a lot of money. Moving on to like the actual most progressive thing that she's been talking about recently. A quote from BBC. She said a quote from BBC says she has also called for capping the monthly price of diabetes drug insulin at $35 for everybody. Previously, it was just for seniors on Medicare. Finding ways to cancel medical debt and giving families a $6,000 tax credit the year they have a new child.
That's gas.
All of that is pretty good. Medical debt is a massive issue. Capping insulin at $35. That is at literal price control, by the way, that is setting a ceiling on what insulin can be charged.
That's communism.
And funny enough, it's one of the most popular economic policies from the Biden administration.
Crazy. It's almost
people love.
It's
the
almost
insulin
as
cap.
if people do fuck with these policies. They just don't fuck with what conservatives call them.
Yes.
And that kind of poisons the well when people want to do good things.
And the thing is, like, insulin, it's a very common drug. Lots of people need it.
Damn near the most inelastic demand
people,
with that thing.
People absolutely need it. It's a life-saving drug.
You get a type 1 diabetic, they need that shit every day or they're fucked.
You need that drug. Capping it at $35 is a fantastic move. And it's again the most progressive thing I think that she's put up so far for policy. And it is literal price caps. Like that is price control, but nobody seems to like rage against that. Maybe because it's like 90% of people agree with it.
And I think it's also the fact that conservatives weren't able to kind of latch on to that and control the narrative. So it's so much of how we talk about policy. Again, nobody cares about policy. Everybody cares about vibes. It's all vibes based. And what matters is who gets to a narrative first and who gets to control how the public talks about it.
Yeah.
Crazy.
The $6,000 tax credit thing is pretty good too. I'm pretty sure this would just be child tax credit, but instead of $2,000, it's $6,000.
Yeah.
Which I fuck with.
Or is
child
it
tax
just
important.
the first year you have a kid?
Oh,
like
so yeah, maybe
like
it would
bonus?
maybe it'd be something new. But $6,000, yeah, the year you have a new kid, which I fuck with that.
Phenomenal. I fuck with it crazy. Give them like $2,000 every following year after that. You know what I'm saying? Like having a kid is expensive. Childcare is prohibitive.
Funny enough, though, J.D. Vance apparently recently called for the child tax credit to be expanded to $5,000, and then he was angry that Kamala Harris said, "Okay, but I want $6,000 for new families." And I think get with it or get shit on, dog. I don't know what to say.
I hope every populist message that the Trump Vance campaign comes out with just gets one-upped by Kamala Harris.
Yeah, because she also did the no taxes on tipped wages thing.
Yes, conservatives freaked out about that. Trump announced that he's like, "Oh, no taxes for tipped wages and whatnot." Then Kamala just immediately came out and she's like, like, yeah, me too. Conservatives on Twitter freaked out. They're like, no, you can't. That's a Trump policy. You can't steal that. It's like, yeah, you can actually.
Yeah, it is a Trump policy. It's not one that I fuck with that hard because it's like just raise wages generally.
Exactly. They shouldn't have to rely on tips to do this.
It's really funny.
It's petty in like the best way because it's like these policies are not locked behind party. Populism is populism no matter who is saying it. Why not adopt the populist rhetoric that isn't like racially coded? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's one of the things that like could feasibly get done. Like I could see Republicans being in favor of eliminating taxes on tipped wages. They can't be the government can't be pulling in that much off of tipped wages, right?
And it's also like eliminating taxes on tipped wages is the tips make up a substantial portion of the people who rely on them's income, right? You're not losing out on that much by doing that. And also it incentivizes them to actually report that money. A big problem during COVID with tip workers is a lot of tip workers won't report their cash tips on their tax forms because they don't want to fucking pay taxes on it. Everybody does it. I don't want to hear anybody come out here and say that I write down every cash payment I've ever received on my tax form.
Bullshit.
I personally do on the record.
Yeah, of course. Me too.
Me personally, I do on the record. I'm a great citizen and whatnot. But a big problem during COVID was tipped workers had not reported all of their wages, and they lost out big on unemployment because they didn't have a basis for how much they were going to pay. They just had to rely on the fucking $2.50 minimum wage that they were making, and so they struggled. If you eliminate taxes or even just like lower them on tips collected, lowering them to, you have a great incentive to actually report the money that you're making on tips, and that can help you out in the future as a taxpayer. Yeah.
Ultimately, I don't think it's like that transformative of a policy.
No.
Again, I'd rather like the wages be increased and like tipping culture kind of just go away completely in the United States.
That's the ideal, isn't it?
But it is funny to just see her finesse these ideas and change them around the edges and be like, yeah, that's my idea.
Yeah.
It does take away a bit of the economic populism that pushes some Trump voters out to advocate for him because they can't say like, oh, look, he's doing this for tipped workers and stuff because it's like, oh, she's also doing it.
She wants to do that too. Plus she wants to do these X, Y, and Z that are better.
Yeah.
It's like you just take all the populism away from Trump and he has nothing.
Some racism, he's got that.
Well, yeah, he has nothing to appeal to a regular person.
Yeah, he loses like the working class. And that's the thing we've been talking about for a long time is like absent left-wing economic populism, fascists get to do it and they get to lie about what they would actually do for the working class. But if you steal that a little bit, even steal the most neoliberal version of that, it makes it hard for Trump to continue doing
fucking means test taxes on tip workers, do whatever, but like just take it from
And I have some hope because Tim Walz was one of the guys that was like, yeah, we shouldn't be means testing anymore. Like universal access.
Oh, hell
which is cool. Like I fundamentally agree.
He fucks, he bangs.
He's cool. Now I expect more policy related stuff to come at the DNC. Republicans are probably going to double down on the communist allegations. I did appreciate that one headline, I think in the Wall Street Journal, that was like, when your enemy calls you a communist, you shouldn't try to set price controls. I really appreciated that one. Yeah. That was cool.
Yeah.
Cool
No, Wall Street Journal and New York Times took the price gouging thing and just absolutely ran with it from a conservative lens.
Yeah.
And it's blowing my fucking mind.
I hope they got paid well for that.
Genuinely fumbling the bag.
Yeah. I hope they got paid real well for that. But turning to Trump now. Trump continues to struggle as Kamala Harris has been climbing further and further in the polling. Trump had a pretty terrible live event on Twitter recently with Elon Musk. Did you subject yourself to this?
I didn't even watch it. I heard that it was awful. I heard it was a slog to get through. Did you watch it?
I only watched like 40 minutes of it. That was after they were late by 45 minutes because Musk claimed that there was a DDoS attack, which I don't believe.
No.
But I listened to some of it.
He couldn't, the Ron DeSantis space didn't work
same
either.
thing.
So it's like he just can't do these things. He doesn't have the infrastructure for it.
Which is weird because like YouTube can host millions of people watching things live.
Yeah.
All at once.
Yeah.
And host all the other videos. Even like the shitty conservative Rumble can host a bunch of people watching live streams. I don't know like what reason there'd be that Twitter can't host a live stream, especially because it wasn't a live stream. It was like it's like an audio live stream. There's no video for it.
It was just audio. There was no video.
It's just audio because it's a Twitter Spaces. There's no video.
Oh my God, dude!
It's just like the DeSantis thing.
He fucking sucks so bad. He sucks so hard. That's what happens when you remove what, like 90% of your staff and cut every critical redundancy that you need. Like, oh my God.
Yeah, you know, people often talk about like, oh, who are the kingmakers in elections? Elon Musk is the opposite of that. You start going to him, it's almost a guarantee that you lose.
Yeah, Ron DeSantis lost, and Trump will hopefully lose in November.
Exactly. Yeah, that's gonna be 0 for 2 for Musk. That's gonna be a trend at that point. All they talked about in the portion that I listened to was the assassination attempt and immigration. That's all I heard,
course.
which was very boring.
I can imagine. It's like nobody cares that Trump got shot anymore.
Yeah.
It's not that interesting to even talk about anymore.
Yeah.
Like it's speculated on. You look at the polls, literally no one cares.
Nobody cares.
Trump did not get a boost in the polls after getting shot and after the RNC. Traditionally, places where you would expect to have a massive rise.
Yeah.
The sympathy vote did not give a shit about him.
The only boost he got was when Joe Biden did so terribly at the debate.
Yeah.
Because people were mad at Joe Biden, or they started to get turned off even more from Joe Biden. So, of course, it's a two-person race. Trump gets a little bit of a boost. But then the polls really started switching when Kamala came in, and now she's above him in some of the national polling. He didn't get anything after the assassination attempt.
Like leveling out, and that's crazy. I'd be pissed, frankly.
As predicted, honestly, that's a cold shot from us because we thought, maybe he'd get a boost, rally around the flag. But we also said the right wing could easily fumble this.
Yeah.
And they did.
I'm just like how I'm embarrassed of saying, like, what is it, like a year ago that I'm scared of Ron DeSantis. Like, I'm like, oh man, Ron DeSantis, he wins the nomination. He's a serious contender. Like, he could be like bad. Look at what he did in Florida.
He's Trump, but worse.
Then he came out, fumbled the bag. I'm embarrassed to say that, like, the day after Trump got shot, when I was like, oh shit, maybe there will be a sympathy vote for him. Maybe these things will happen.
Yeah.
Wow, awful take.
Well, and we did say on that pod, like 24 hours after the assassination attempt, we did say, like, there's a chance everybody forgets about this.
Yeah, and I woke up the next day caring so much less about when it actually happened. Like, I don't know.
And then a week later, Joe Biden dropped out, and it was all sunflowers and roses. You know what I'm saying?
And I mean, speaking to the strength of being able to control narratives, the Democrats have controlled this entire election cycle now at this point.
And I fuck with it.
Trump got shot and got a week of media. He got 1 week of media. The shooter was a part of the one demographic that was just the best for the left.
Yeah, that works out.
He was a white male conservative. They couldn't pin this on anything. Like... They couldn't pin any of this on a minority cynically. You know what I mean? And that is exactly what we needed. He got a week of news, and then immediately the only thing that I've heard out of the Trump Vance campaign is that Trump made a mistake picking Vance. It's sick.
And so we get the Trump assassination attempt. He's got the ear thing on at the RNC. The RNC was a freak show other than that I think turned people even more off of Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And then he was boring during his speech.
Yeah.
And nobody cared. And then Joe Biden dropped out and everyone was like, all right, cool. I fuck with Democrats again. Yeah, like it just nobody cares. It's awesome. Now, as we said, Trump is struggling a little bit. And he's continued to struggle landing solid attacks on Kamala Harris. But there's been one reoccurring attack that I've noticed that is concerning, I would say. That's a little unsettling. Donald Trump, Trump repeatedly has called Kamala Harris a, quote, low IQ individual. And Trump's campaign spokespeople have repeated the low IQ line in a couple of different documents and quotes that I have seen. Now, it's completely normal to call your opponent dumb.
Yeah.
Tried and true election tactic. He's dumb. He doesn't know what he's talking about, so on and so forth. However, invoking IQ, something about it seems very racist.
Word choice matters.
Yeah, and it feels weird to me that black woman running against Donald Trump gets called a low IQ individual, especially because a lot of the race science motherfuckers tend to invoke IQ when they're talking about the justifications for their racism.
Well, that's the only time you ever hear IQ be brought up in your adult life is when a race science guy on Twitter pulls up an IQ curve.
Yes.
Like that's it.
Running against a black woman, it feels like a very obvious dog whistle. Him saying like, oh, she's a low IQ individual, especially because, and someone can correct me on this, I don't think he ever called Biden a low IQ individual.
No.
I don't remember him calling Hillary Clinton a low IQ individual. He's just using it against Kamala Harris, and it feels pretty explicitly racist. Yeah. Not to mention IQ, imperfect tool to measure intelligence. But it's always used against, like, African countries when it's like, look how low their IQ is. They're worse than white people.
I'm not going to investigate this further.
Yeah,
look,
exactly.
This area of the world has a lower IQ than this area of the world. I will not investigate further. I will not look into the reasons behind this. Like, you could call her dumb. You could say you idiot.
Yeah.
None of these things are racially charged in the way that IQ is racially charged.
Yeah.
Only the most insane people have used IQ unironically.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And speaking of racially charged, I do want to talk about J.D. Vance for just a moment here. He held a press conference recently where he was asked about immigration and more specifically his plan for mass deportation.
His plan for mass deportation. Okay.
Yeah, and he didn't really give a plan. I wouldn't say, like, we still haven't got the particulars, and as we'll talk about in a moment, incredibly hard harmful.
Yeah.
If it actually
incredibly
happened.
harmful rhetoric alone.
But I want you, dear listener, to pay close attention to the language that he's using when he talks about groups of immigrants coming into the country and refusing to assimilate into American culture. So let's take a listen.
All right.
Anybody ever seen the movie Gangs of New York?
No.
That's what I'm talking about. We know that when you have these massive ethnic enclaves forming in our country, it can sometimes lead to higher crime rates. What we want is an American immigration policy that promotes assimilation, that no matter where you come from, you can become an American, but only if we have an immigration policy that promotes assimilation instead of doing things like what we've done over the last few years, which is have 25 million illegal aliens just setting up shop here with no control, no enforcement, and no real ability to police what's going on. That is a disaster. And in fact, what we did back in the early 20th century is that we recognized, and I think that we have to do that today, we recognize that at a certain level, America is a welcoming country to immigrants, but can only take so many people. We cannot take the entire world into this country. And I think that we're at a stage right now where we have to say we've got to slow those illegal immigration levels to zero. We do have to deport some people who have come here illegally. And I think that will promote assimilation and a common American culture that's in the best interest of everybody. Look, I'm married to the daughter of South Asian immigrants. One of the reasons why I think that we have such a wonderful and successful marriage is because we both very much feel like America is our home, like our children belong here. What happens when you have massive amounts of illegal immigration, it actually starts to create ethnic conflict. It creates higher crime rates. We've certainly seen that over the last few years, and I would like to stop it, and I know Donald Trump would too.
So if you didn't catch it at the beginning there, he said we have ethnic enclaves that are not assimilating into the country. And I felt like I had to bring that up because definitely showcases that he's got a totally normal view of race.
And it's also
in this
like,
country.
You know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
He's not talking about Greektown.
Yeah.
He's not talking about Little Italy. He's not talking about Chinatown even. He's just talking about places where Mexican people live.
Yeah.
And it's like, what is assimilation if not coming here, living here, working here, functioning within the society here? You don't have like you don't even have to necessarily like speak the language here. We do not have a national language.
Yeah.
We do not speak English nationally. It just happens that most people in America are English speakers out of convenience for how things have worked out. I wouldn't even argue you have to speak English to live here. When my grandma immigrated, she didn't speak English. She ended up learning just by osmosis. But still, you live here, you work here, you contribute here, you function within the society. You've assimilated enough.
Yeah, and I don't know if you all caught that, but somewhere in the middle of that response, he starts talking about the wave of immigration that we got in the early 20th century, and he's referring there to Irish and Italian immigrants that came over and formed these quote-unquote ethnic enclaves where there was a lot of crime and violence and stuff like that. But if we applied the Trump-Vance solution, the one that they're proposing right now, we would have deported millions of Italians and Irish people.
Damn, bro, maybe they are POC.
Yeah, well, and it's like, and that's the thing is like the reason, like, yes, when Italian and Irish immigrants came over, there was a lot of gang violence in those communities, but specifically because they were discriminated against and treated as non-white, which is exactly what we do with immigrants that come into the country right now, and it's what JD Vance and Trump want to do. Mm-hmm. Like, what are we talking about? If we applied their proposed solution to those immigrants, they wouldn't, their families, their descendants wouldn't be in the country now.
It's also like, how did we solve those problems? We started treating those groups of people like people.
Yes.
And then the problem went away. You don't have Irish gangs walking around the streets terrorizing New York.
Yeah.
Like we solved the issue by, I don't know, being empathetic, being good people, treating them like people. It's so fucking asinine, man. And you just can't get into these arguments without them just being racist.
Yeah,
like, I'm sorry, you just can't.
And before we move on here, I do want to highlight that Trump and JD Vance have kept talking about this mass deportation effort they're going to undertake if they win the election. In the same breath, they'll say it's something like 25 million illegal immigrants that are right here now that they want to deport. I think people really underestimate how insanely harmful it will be to try to deport that many millions of people.
You will cripple the Texas economy.
Well, not only cripple the economy, but that's like a mass death event.
Yeah.
Like an extreme amount of violence is required to get that done, right? Like a relocation of 25 million people, even if we presuppose that that number is correct, would require a heretofore unprecedented level of state violence. And I think people really underestimate that because, again, even if we pretend that 25 million is the actual number, those people have lives.
Yeah.
They have jobs, they have communities that are a part of, they have homes here, they have kids that are here right now.
It's almost like they've assimilated throughout the broader United States. It just doesn't look like how you want it to look.
And even if you did manage to deport 25 million people, where are you going to send them? Because again, they've been here for years, even under the Republican examination of this issue. Not to mention, how are you going to find these people?
Yeah.
You're going to have citizens reporting on their neighbors because they look too foreign or speak too much Spanish? Like, how do you even get any of this done? These are the questions that they never answer. And I think even if they do win, they will certainly try to make this happen. And people really do not know how much of a waste of resources it's going to be, and how many people are going to die as a result.
And it's also like, I mean, say that there are a bunch of people here illegally, like they're unidentified. How you going to identify them? Exactly. Like,
yeah,
it's so fucking.
It's literally sending federal agents into communities to just rip people from their homes.
And there's not even a layer of seriousness behind like, okay, there is a problem of these organizations at the border who are here to process people being overwhelmed. There's no seriousness when it comes to dealing with any of this issue. It's just get the Mexicans. Yeah. Get them out of here.
It's bad. Lastly, before we move on to some geopolitics, VP debate's been scheduled for October 1st on CBS. That's a Tuesday.
You know we'll be there.
Mark your calendars. We're going to be there. It's going to be very exciting as we head into September in just a few weeks. So be on the lookout.
The presidential debate, that's in like, what, 3 weeks?
September 10th, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. 3 weeks.
This is August 18th right now? Yeah, like 3 weeks. Oh,
I'm excited.
I'm geeked.
I'm very excited.
I cannot wait to get up on that stage. I just like, I don't know.
I can't wait for us to be up there with them.
I can't wait for us to be up there moderating the debate with them, guys. I'm excited to announce that ABC News has hit us up to moderate the debate. They've heard our critiques of the last few. They really fucked with them. They said, you guys got it.
They saw our 4 million view TikTok, and they're like, we got to get these guys on the moderation panel.
We have to get these. No one else has reached this big.
We're going to live fact check, and I'm going to be honest. I'm playing sides.
Oh, I'm biased up there. I'm biased up there. I'm giving Kamala Harris more time. I'm cutting Trump's time damn near in half, right? I'm cutting mics. I am cutting mics. Like, unless Trump is making a statement that I recognize will hurt him in the long run, I'm turning the mic back on.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to be like, Kamala Harris, why are you the perfect candidate for president? And then I'm going to be like, Donald Trump, why'd you fly in Jeffrey Epstein's plane so many times?
I'm having a projector in the back for my live fact checks, right? But I'm lying.
My fact checks are lies.
Exactly, but I'm lying. Like I will fact check Trump, when he genuinely says something wrong. But then I'll also like slip in a half truth there too.
I do what I got to do.
Exactly. Like,
I have an agenda to push.
Yeah, this is about democracy.
So I'm excited to see what happens to this VP debate, and I'm excited for you all to be there with us. Stay tuned for more info later on.
They get up there and lie. Why can't I?
That's a good point.
You know what I mean? Yeah. This is the spin room, and we're bringing it to the national stage.
Got to.
Come on now. And speaking of the national stage, we got to go a little international with this with this update out of Gaza, right? Because every week got to talk about it. It's important. So this past week, it was announced that mediators from Egypt, Qatar, the U.S., Israel, and Hamas are getting very close to a ceasefire agreement. I would hold your breath, though. I wouldn't hold my breath. A U.S. official said Friday that they believe that a ceasefire deal is so imminent that they are already working with other mediators to iron out.
For months.
That's what I'm saying. And I'll get there in a little bit, but oh my gosh, man, it's just the same fucking song and dance every month, right? Yeah. But either way, a U.S. official said Friday that they believe a ceasefire deal is so imminent, so close to being around the corner that they are already working with the other mediators in Egypt and Qatar to iron out the logistics for both the release of hostages and distribution of aid into Gaza. This official is claiming that they are so close that they're already starting to take concrete steps to do these things. That does sound kind of hopeful, right? Yeah, like it sounds kind of hopeful.
But I do remember Joe Biden in that ice cream parlor licking his ice cream cone saying, like, "Oh yeah, I expect we'll get a ceasefire deal by Friday." And this was like back in April.
I do remember Joe Biden saying, "Oh yeah, Netanyahu agreed," and then Netanyahu saying, "I did not fucking agree to that. I did not say any of that." Right?
And then we invited him to the Capitol.
Keep all of that in mind when I'm fucking talking talking about this story, and this anonymous official said that the current proposal bridges every gap between Israel and Hamas.
All of them?
Fire this guy.
All of them?
Fire this guy. He is not serious. An anonymous official looking for his 15 minutes of fame. Like, I swear to God, we are just getting out there and lying to the press.
Every gap between Israel and Hamas. So Hamas just agreed to kill themselves?
That's what I'm saying. Like that. Like that's what it would be.
Yeah.
That's the big gap that we need to bridge.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And they said they're taking concrete steps to create what they call is a quote unquote implementation cell in Cairo that would be tasked with making sure all the terms of the deal are implemented. So this anonymous official is really trying to sell us on the idea that like they actually have people that they are hiring and they're creating task forces to actually implement these things. Like I guess trying to instill this confidence that it's actually going to happen, right? And this is backed by a commitment from Egypt's president to work harder to bring these negotiations for a close. Again, I feel like I've been hearing this forever.
Yeah,
I feel like
literally like once a month, it's them telling like, oh, we're super close. We can't disclose the details because it might upset these very, very delicate conversations.
Negotiations, guys. We're so close, guys. This mediator just said that they want to work even harder now, as they weren't working harder when 30,000 people were dead, but now that 40,000 people are dead, they really want to work hard. Antony Blinken has the fakest job in the entire United States government right now. Like I can't. He's in Israel, I think, right now to actually work with Netanyahu to try and quote unquote to do a bunch of diplomacy to try to bring these talks together, because all parties, including Israel and Hamas, are expected to convene in Cairo this week to finalize the deal. That's what's being reported to us. Antony Blinken is there with Netanyahu right now trying to rizz him up or something. I don't know.
Really making an argument against diplomacy.
Honest.
It's not against diplomacy. This is bad diplomacy, to be fair. Really bad diplomacy, but it's just
fake.
Ugh.
Like I don't believe that any meaningful thing is happening behind these doors. They have told us time and time again that they're right around the corner. Something's happening. This process is so delicate. Israel does something very undelicate. Hamas does something undelicate. I don't fucking know. That nobody is negotiating in good faith, but yet you keep telling me that they are, even though I can see it with my eyes and my ears.
And now somehow we've bridged every issue between
like
the two?
really. It's the most unbelievable statement in this entire week. Damn near most unbelievable statement of the year. You mean to tell me that these two groups that are damn near ontologically opposed, diametrically opposed to each other, we've bridged every gap. We've really had them talk it out. I know that they just killed the guy they were talking to. This new guy really wants to talk it out.
They killed the negotiators.
This new
Maybe
guy
that's
said,
why they were able to bridge
I'll
those
fucking
gaps.
kill myself. Like, for sure. Don't worry, guys. You guys got it. You're right. I was wrong. They talk no jutsu to Hamas. That's what's going on here. Oh, my goodness. And it's reported that this deal is largely the same as the one Biden was pushing earlier this summer at the end of May, with some clarifications based on the recent talks. What are those clarifications? We have no fucking idea.
Yeah.
But the main thing with that proposal was that there was going to be a 6-week ceasefire with the release of hostages, the IDF pulling out of Gaza, and during that 6 weeks, intense negotiations would happen between all of these same mediators who have gotten nothing done so far to actually bring a formal end to the war between Israel and Hamas. That's what was on the table before.
I remember reporting on that back in June?
Yes.
And then immediately
May,
fell through.
early June. And then immediately Netanyahu said no, and Hamas said no, and Biden said no. We got it, guys.
Oh, we were when he first did that, we're like, maybe this is like a 4D chess move. Joe Biden's
force him into it.
Gonna force him into it publicly. Didn't work. I think at the time we said he could just say fuck off, but he definitely did it. He did with fervor.
God damn. And it's like I do want to make clear that that deal already represented a massive concession from Hamas, because as the BBC reports, Hamas had dropped their demand for a straight up ceasefire in favor of the 6-week ceasefire to further negotiate. You're telling me these guys are dropping their demands for stopping killing civilians, but Israel, the only democracy in the Middle East, can't drop their demand to kill the people they're negotiating with? I'm not saying Hamas is a good faith actor. I'm not gonna get out here and do that. But
no, of course not.
Again, just like the optics of this, it's not working. Like nothing is working.
Yeah, no, Hamas, of course, is not a good faith actor, but they're the ones that have been agreeing to these proposals more than Israel has been.
And making more concessions, and you can say that may be cynical. But, I mean, Israel's fallen for the trap. Israel's fallen for the rhetorical trap here.
Yeah, prove it. Call their bluff and say, agree to the proposal, and if they're really doing it so cynically, they won't actually come in on their end of the deal. Prove it.
Then you have plausible deniability to do fucking more things. I wouldn't think so, but you would have greater plausible deniability to do more genocidal things in the region if you did just, I don't know, act with restraint.
Yeah,
but that's not
impossible for
what's
those
happening
guys,
here, and that's where the critique centers around. And I also cannot state enough that we don't know anything.
Yeah, because they don't tell us.
We don't know anything.
Yeah.
John Kirby refuses to say anything. Joe Biden refuses to say anything. These talks are too delicate to let the public know what's going on.
What could be so delicate about these talks that the public can't know, though?
That's what I'm wondering.
How would journalists and motherfuckers like us knowing about the peace deal talks? How would that disrupt them in any way? Like, I don't have my fucking hotline to Joe Biden.
I'm saying
I can't call Netanyahu.
I don't even think, what is the issue, exactly what Palestinian prisoners will be released that they're bargaining with? I don't think anybody would fucking give a shit.
But all the people that could influence the deals that are being made or the negotiations that are happening already know the particulars.
Exactly.
I don't know how us knowing about it would make a difference. The only explanation that makes sense here is that it's not actually gonna happen.
I also
and they're
think
just
so.
They've been fucking with us for months now.
Well, I think it gives them plausible deniability to say that they've been making progress when not a single concession has actually been made.
It's like, Joe, you're not
October
running
7th.
anymore. You can just be honest with us.
That's what I'm saying.
You already dropped out.
You don't got to worry about losing, and now you can let Kamala go in a new direction.
Yeah, no, exactly. What are we doing?
Unburdened by everything that has been, except for this old man that is just refusing to do anything good. Oh my goodness, man. And speaking of that old man, Biden has come out and said, quote, "We are closer than we've ever been to an agreement." Notably, again, he said this shit months ago when there was never, in fact, an agreement. And he's speaking less fervently about it now than he was then. So that gives me even less confidence that anything's going to happen this week.
Yeah. Got no faith in this guy.
What are we doing? The only thing that is sort of giving me optimism is the fact that regional war is closer than it's ever been. And I can't imagine we would want that. I just can't.
Yeah, you think maybe Israel attacking Tehran a few weeks ago motivated Antony Blinken to start doing his job?
I hope so. I hope so, because it's getting bad. And I'll skip ahead a little bit to what I wanted to talk about in a little bit, but just sort of on broader regional war, in an AP article that I was reading about these ceasefire talks, an Israeli foreign minister, Israel Katz, has said that they told the Brits and the French that if Iran attacks Israel, Israel expects its allies to not just help Israel defend itself, but also join in attacking Iran. Israel wants to start a world war with a nuclear power.
Dog.
No, just fucking no.
Dog, this is when you put the toddler in timeout. What the fuck are you talking about? Get into a regional war with Iran when we don't know what allies they got with Russia and China and shit? You're crazy.
Literally.
You
are fucking insane. I don't know what you're smoking, but keep that shit away from me. What is going on?
They expect the Brits and the French to join it. Come on, dog.
Yeah. That means they expect us to join.
Well,
and
Article 5 of NATO, yeah.
Antony Blinken is there oh yeah, we totally would. Yeah, for sure. Please just cease fire, though. Please don't.
Yeah, because if Israel can rope in France and the Brits, then any attack on those countries, we have to respond as well.
Yes.
Article 5 of NATO. I don't think Israel's a part of NATO. I don't remember.
I don't think so either, but damn near biggest argument to leave NATO.
Yeah, Joe Biden's going to announce that NATO's being dissolved. It's just this is fucking Israel's trying to end the goddamn world.
No, I'm saying Joe Biden's going to get word from fucking Tehran that Israel is that Iran is going to do some strike in France, and immediately we're out of NATO. We are pulling out. That better be what fucking happens. I'm draft dodging.
Absolutely. I'm pulling a Tim Walz.
I'm pulling a Donald Trump.
Yeah.
I'm draft dodging, brother. That's not fucking happening.
How did Trump draft
impossible.
dodge? You said he had some
Bone
disorder or
spurs.
something? Yeah. What? Me too.
Dude, I've been had those.
I got a hurt tummy.
I'm saying, look at my gait. It's kind of fucked up. I think sometimes when I walk, I couldn't ruck march.
I got a podcast to run. You think I could deploy?
You want a bedwetter in the army?
Exactly.
You want the podcasting class bedwetters to really join the army and go fight?
Yeah, and here I thought I missed the opportunity to serve in the Middle East. I thought I was born too late, but I was born just in time to serve in the Middle East.
Exactly.
Let's go. Born too late to serve in the Middle East, born just in time to serve in the Middle East.
Damn, I turned 18 and I could have served in the Middle East, but I missed my opportunity. And then Joe Biden pulled out, and I was like, damn, I finally can't go serve in the Middle East, even though I've been gearing up and waiting so that I could do that. After I turned 18 and after we pulled out, I realized that's what I want to do. And now the opportunity is rearing its silly little head again. And oh my goodness, it's crazy. But that's where we are right now. That's where we're left today. And I'd be remiss to not talk about the response to this from the two parties at hand. Per the AP, Israel released a vague statement saying that it appreciated the mediators' efforts, and Netanyahu released a statement saying that they are cautiously optimistic that ceasefire talks could happen. But Hamas spoke to the BBC. I think Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, the new leader of Hamas, spoke directly to the BBC.
Yahya Sinwar didn't get got?
No, he hasn't been killed yet. That was the other guy.
Okay.
That was the previous negotiator.
Oh, he was named the negotiator?
He was named the replacement after the strike in Iran's capital. That's possibly going to start World War III, but whatever. I'm not worried about that right now. Hamas is saying that any idea that negotiations are close to being over is a complete illusion.
Great.
So...
yeah, it's not good. What do you know why they said that, or they're just saying like, yeah, no, they're puffing smoke?
I think it largely hinges on the idea that like, I don't know exactly why they're saying it, but I mean, Israel is still saying they're going to kill all of them.
Yeah,
it is still Israeli governmental policy that they will kill everyone in Hamas.
Yeah, Hamas has to be eradicated. That's the war plan. Yeah.
So, and Israel is bringing that to the negotiating table. How do you negotiate with that? That's fundamentally a bad faith. And like, as much as Israel makes vague statements in support or says they want to do something to bring the hostages home, there's still no change in that official governmental policy of eliminating Hamas.
Yeah.
And as I've said for the last 3 weeks, and I'll say it again, that's not a policy that's conducive to good faith negotiations. You can't negotiate with someone and tell them that you want to not only kill them, but you want to kill anyone that's associated with them, and you will shoot through civilians to get through them. Because that has functionally been the Israeli policy when it comes to actually executing on the idea that they will get rid of Hamas. As per the BBC on Saturday, yesterday, the day before we recorded this, there was an airstrike in a central Gaza neighborhood that killed 15 people. Among the dead were 9 children and 3 women. That ratio is fucked, brother.
Did they even get the Hamas guys?
I don't know. If we're classifying all 3 of the people that were adult males as Hamas, then maybe.
Yeah, once again, you don't shoot through the human shield.
Yeah, that ratio is fucked.
You can't do that.
I'm saying. So it's
immoral.
Like, I don't know. And it's like, I can't imagine that all the gaps were bridged between these people. Israel wants to kill them.
Yeah. It's just ridiculous.
And that's where we're left with ceasefire negotiations. So I would not hold my breath. I bet when we convene again next Sunday for the sermon, I'm going to come here and say, well, negotiations fell through again. Something happened, blah, blah, blah. More bad things are going on.
Man, it's going to be so crazy if we actually send troops to Iran to fight against Iran. That's going to be... I don't think, I'm hesitant to get into like the, oh my God, it's literally World War III type shit,
I'm not with that.
People do that every time there's like a geopolitical conflict. People do that with Russia and Ukraine. Like that's not World War III. But I don't want that. I don't want war to happen generally.
And it's like, I don't want even the possibility of that happening. And I don't want any armies to fight and kill each other. It's just not, I don't think war is conducive to things.
I thought history was over.
I'm saying, I wish Fukuyama was right.
Fukuyama's
really
a goddamn liar.
He was right. Oh my gosh,
he lied to us.
It's like, why would we let them? Why would we let them say that?
Yeah, we could. That's the thing that underlines this whole conflict. Is like we could just tell them no. Like you can't do that.
This. We could cut off arms.
Yep.
And then no fighting going on, and it'd be fine. But instead, they want to do strikes outside their territory. They want to actively provoke people, and we are just letting them.
And I need Kamala Harris to come out and say that we're going to put an arms embargo on them unless they start fucking listening.
God, wouldn't that be phenomenal?
I don't know if she'll say that until maybe she wins, but.
Yeah,
I feel like we probably don't get that as a policy prescription, but we know that she's talking to people who have been pushing that idea.
Yes.
So
there's a chance. Maybe? There's hope. I'm cautiously optimistic.
10%.
Incredibly cautious.
That's a classic Hiddo 10% chance right there.
That's what I'm saying. But there is some other news outside of Israel that broke this week. I don't have as detailed of a segment about it, but I think the headline alone kind of speaks for itself. Okay. I had found this while listening to the Majority Report on my way to come here and record. And I'm going to read off the headline from Haaretz, which is a reputable Israeli news organization. This is an internal investigation within their own country.
Okay.
Haaretz. Israeli news, right? Haaretz investigation. Israel army uses Palestinian civilians to inspect potential booby-trapped tunnels in Gaza.
Oh my God!
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm fucking saying. And
that's
you can't
villain
get around
shit.
that.
That's cartoon villain shit.
There's no context. There's no fucking context whatsoever that gets around the idea that you're using someone who's not an active combatant to be a human shield.
They said you go first.
Exactly.
They said you go first.
You can't fucking do that.
Oh my God, that's like literal like Indiana Jones villain shit. Like you got to go down the hallway first.
This is the self-prescribed most moral army in the world. That's what they call themselves. Yet Haaretz is investigating and saying that they're doing this. The like sub headline or whatever says, "Our lives are more important than their lives. Gazans not," that's in quotes, "Gazans not suspected of terrorism are detained and sent as human shields to search tunnels and houses before IDF soldiers enter with the full knowledge of senior Israeli officers. Several sources say IDF claims this practice is forbidden."
Actually fucking horrifying.
And I need to emphasize, this is from Haaretz.
Yes.
This is from an actual reputable news organization within Israel.
This
is
sickening.
a serious investigation with a serious accusation going on here. This is not to be taken lightly. And, honestly, a part of a broader trend. We have had multiple investigations come out about IDF soldiers doing genuinely wicked and evil things.
Yeah.
And then the IDF does an internal investigation, says that these instances do not represent the values of the entire IDF, and then moves on with no real punishments levied, no real actual change going on. Yet it just keeps getting worse and worse. And now we are at the point of them using literal human shields.
A few weeks ago, Israel had their own like January 6th, but it was people protesting that the government, like the military police within Israel, were going to punish other members of the IDF for like sexually abusing Palestinians prisoners.
Yes.
And they protested to protect the people that did the sexual abuse. And then we have this report where they're saying
members of the government were trying to protect sexual abuse.
How can you act like you're the heroes here, like you're the good guys here, when you're saying shit like our lives are more important than theirs?
Yes.
Is that the type of shit that the good guys say?
And Haaretz is alleging that like brigade commanders of the IDF are aware of this practice and encouraging this practice. And I mean, how could you not? There's a video on Al Jazeera of something looking like this happen. Haaretz is saying that they are dressing up these Palestinian civilians in IDF fatigues, but they're wearing sneakers and they have their hands tied behind their back as they enter these places. They are fully using innocent Palestinians as human shields, or even fucking non. You know how hard it is? They made this point on the Majority Report. You know how hard it is to be a male Palestinian that's an adult and not be accused of terrorism? You know how hard it is to just be a adult male civilian Gazan?
Yeah, and even so, you're being subjected to this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're being fucking dressed up and then thrown on top of bombs for IDF soldiers to come and kill your family.
One of the most pervasive narratives for this entire genocide has been that the Palestinians should also want to be free of Hamas, and the IDF can help get rid of Hamas, which is good for Palestinians as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But here, clearly not. In their effort to exterminate Hamas, quote unquote, they're subjecting Palestinians to the very thing they're saying that they're going to save Palestinians from.
Not only are they shooting through women, children, and innocent Palestinian men to get the one Hamas guy, they in front of them while they're shooting is another innocent Palestinian. So in case they're shot at, they get got first.
Yeah, and they intentionally put them there.
Yes,
they put the civilian in harm's way.
Here's an excerpt from a Guardian article that's covering this investigation from Haaretz. The practice was so widespread across different units fighting in Gaza that it could, in effect, be considered a, quote, protocol, said Nadav Weiman, the executive director of Breaking the Silence, a group funded by Israeli combat veterans to document military abuses. The group has collected testimony describing the practice from veterans of the 10-month war in Gaza. The accounts have been heard match these reports in an investigation by the newspaper Haaretz, which claimed that the chief of staff's office was aware of the practice. Quote, the senior ranks know about it. One source said to have been taken part in finding civilians to serve as human shields told the paper. Quote, our lives are more important than their lives, Haaretz quoted commanders telling their soldiers.
That is fucking nuts.
If this isn't grounds for just complete arms embargo, then what is? Literally what is?
The depth of human evil right there.
I'm saying.
Like, that is like... that's mortifying. I can't even put words to it. That's so bad.
You can't even excuse it. You couldn't excuse this in any fucking circumstance, right? You know what I mean? And the fact that they are innocent Gazans is just another like level to this that makes it so crazy. You tell me it's Hamas members that they captured that they're making go first. I'm still going to tell you that is fucking wrong and horrible and horror and evil. But it's like they're trying.
And I can already imagine like Zionists defending this by saying like, oh, well, Hamas put the traps there. It's their fault. You know what I mean? It's
Exactly,
like, you're the ones exposing Palestinians to it when you're trying to say that you're trying to protect all the innocent civilians.
Exactly.
When Netanyahu performatively says like, oh, every innocent life lost is a tragedy, it's like, well, you're directly killing them here, even if you have some deniability elsewhere, which I can see right through anyways.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Continuing with this Guardian article, here's another excerpt. Palestinian civilians, mostly young men, are picked up by Israeli soldiers dressed in Israeli army uniforms, then sent into tunnels and damaged houses ahead of Israeli forces, sources told Haaretz and Breaking the Silence. Their hands are tied together and a camera is attached to their bodies as they go in. Palestinians are told, do one mission of a tunnel shaft and you're free. Haaretz quoted one soldier saying, afterward, the men are reportedly released to join their families, underlining to the soldiers who spoke to Haaretz and Breaking the Silence that they were civilians who did not pose any military threat and had been detained only for the clearance operations. They are grabbing people out of the streets and forcing them to go inside these buildings to check them for traps, and then telling them if they do that, they can leave.
If they can survive.
What if they don't?
Yeah.
Like, what if they don't want to? You fucking force them to go in? The most moral army on the earth, people. The army that says that they have a complex system of lawyers that approve every single airstrike that goes through 15 children's to get one Hamas guy. That's what we're dealing with here. Like, I can't, like...
Yeah, those lawyers are doing legal gymnastics to work that one out.
I'm saying, if they're even real, like, this is... It's so fucking
and it's
bad.
like the line where it's like our lives are more important than theirs. Brother, you're a soldier. Die for the cause.
Exactly.
Like isn't that what soldiers do? You put your life on the line for the country?
And that's been a position that we've held for the last fucking 3 years. Before most people have been talking about Gaza, that is a position that we've held when they fucking blew up the AP building 3 years ago. One of the first instances of like this that we covered in the life of this show, Israel bombed an AP building because they said that Hamas was there. Like Hamas was hiding in the basement. And our contention is like, okay, you are killing all of these civilians to allegedly get this. Send in soldiers to confirm. Soldiers are the people that have signed up to do this.
Yeah.
I understand that there's a conversation to be had about how Israel, the IDF, is a conscription army.
Yeah.
But the mandatory thing is 2 years. There are people that choose to stay after that. There are people that choose to make the IDF their career. Why are we not sending them in?
Yeah, spending your special ops equivalent
They
or whatever.
chose to sign up and do these things.
Yeah.
But instead, they sit there in their fucking planes miles above the sky and rain down literal death from above on fucking women, children, and innocent men.
And they're not even brave enough to clear the tunnels on their own?
Exactly.
Crazy.
What happened to those fucking like drones they were sending in the tunnels or whatnot? Like, and it just underscores that this is just, it's an impossible fucking fight.
Yeah.
You can't fucking do it, man. And I was genuinely stunned to see this.
crazy.
And I don't get surprised by hearing about bad things Israel did anymore. You know what I mean? Last week we covered the bombing. That was, they bombed the mosque inside the school that was turned into the refugee camp. That's already like evil enough. That's already cartoonish enough.
Yeah.
And now we have this and it's like, I'm fucking floored. Like I thought I was evil maxed. You know what I mean?
I wonder what else they're going to come up with.
I don't know. I don't know.
I thought the Mein Kampf thing was enough propaganda. Now
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Oh my god, man. We've come such a long way, and they're still coming up with new ways to be evil.
And it's
I wonder what we haven't found out about. Like what practices they're doing in secret still.
what is the IDF doing behind closed doors? Like I was shocked to find out about the Israeli government official and Israeli citizens protesting to say that yes, you can rape Palestinian prisoners.
Yeah.
What are we talking about?
Yeah.
What are we talking about, brother?
Insane.
That's not like a sensationalized thing. That is what happened.
That's the facts of it. Yeah. It's bad out here. It's real bad.
It's wicked. It's wicked, and it's even crazier to know that people in the government have the power to stop this.
Tell them no,
they
Joe.
Won't.
Tell them no, Joe.
Tell them no, Joe. And this is another thing that happened this week. Donald Trump spoke at a I can't remember her name, but she was formerly she's the widow of and like Zionist super donator. You know what I mean? Donald Trump spoke at like a Zionist event where he was given I think she said she was going to dedicate $100 million to a PAC to help Donald Trump if he spoke at this thing, and reaffirmed his like commitment to Zionism and Israel.
And he'll do anything for the money.
And he will. And he did. He went and spoke at the event, and in my mind, that underscored the idea that you're never going to out-evil conservatives. You're not going to out-evil them on the border. You're not going to out-immigrant them. You're not going to out-anti-immigrant them. And you're not going to out-Zionist them, because they will do whatever for the bag if they're Donald Trump, or whatever just for the evil cause.
Yeah, no, it's bad. And I bet if John Kirby was asked about this, he'd be like, oh, I don't believe the reports.
I
haven't seen the report.
I can't speak on this because it might upset, delicate things that are happening behind
We're looking
the
into
scenes. Exactly. We're looking into it. We'll find out more going on. And I mean, in her speech introducing him, she listed off all the things that we listed off when we were talking about how awful conservatives are on this issue. She's like, he gave us the Golan Heights. He moved the embassy to
You're
Jerusalem.
talking about Kamala Harris?
No, I'm talking about the chick that introduced Donald Trump and.
But they were saying it's good stuff.
They're saying it's good stuff.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, exactly. No, they're saying it's good stuff. Not Kamala Harris. This chick that has too much money.
See, I interpreted that as someone attacking Trump.
No, I fucking wish. Like, we attacked Trump by saying those things. She's like, yeah, he did all this, he did this, and that was only his first term.
Oof.
Damn. Cut it off right there.
Yeah.
Let's stop right there, brother. I can't imagine what he would be okay with in the second term. Ridiculous.
Oh,
Ridiculous.
Man. It's bad.
It is.
Geopolitics bad, once again, from the number one geopolitical podcast.
Once again, we're here to talk about it and cover it, folks.
Number one economic podcast, number one geopolitical podcast, number one podcast.
Number one materialist praxis with theory podcast.
Principled.
Podcast,
I go outside and I feel the grass.
I go outside, I touch the grass, and I pay too much in rent. And that's the most important for these analyses. Oh, my God.
Oh, man. Well, with that,
we gotta give a special thanks to the people who fund our groceries,
fund our rent,
and fund our rent. Special thanks to Caden Kraut, Lord Tyler the Radiant, Chris the Postman, Christy Beck, Dylan B, Andrew Harris, Mike Chaplinsky, Mattias T, Omar Zuno, Clayton LaFed, Mark Yeager, Caleb Joy, Rich Tarotari, Gavin Mayer, Maldonado, Hunter W, Fergalaki, Max Vezquez, Jacob Routers, Colin Mooberry, Fixer Punk, Jim Egbers, Jeff Muzzy, Big Burrito, Cincy Alex, Joe Stenstrom, Adrian Sandoval, Chloe Sam 601, Colleen Cutsford, Yuck, Jennifer DeVoe, Big Bird Titty, Crawfish, and Bennett Bennington III, Alexia Benanti, Nietzsche, Big Booty Beatdown, Sam Maloney, Two-Headed Boy, Ben Shapiro's boyfriend, Ted Cruz's boy toy, Dictator Jace, Luke O'Shea, Cucker Tarleson, Danielle Jackson, The Word of Microsoft, Jennifer Science, Aaron and his Gundam Gundams, Darth Father, Tailored for Contact, Corey Chambers, L.E.N., Devin Hatchard, Retro Mondo, Emma the Dude Slayer, Veronica, a.k.a. V, Raxon, Ass Smith, The Glotler, Flower Clown, Beetlebugs, Murder in a Trench Coat, Lonnie Rogers, Slavic and Sapphic, Casey Lynn Kelly, Snake Eyes, and Hope of Giants, A.K. Ghana, Quana, Don,
Zach Lantian, Info Russell, Austin Greif, Marcus Corbett, Caleb Roper, Taylor Rensock, Cammy, Tylen Freeman, Steak Daddy, Tay, Isaac Hodges, Madeline C, Kayla Lowe, Anna Volinik, Casey C, Sayesta West, August, Particular Pikmin, Sir Capalot, Jeff Signs, Howard the Duck, Brendan is Egg, JR, Drew Batchilder, Froggy Gumdrop, Zen doing their best, Jackie Boy, Shameless, Coherent Babbles, Sasha, MJ is Sharp, Michaela Muncie, The Wallace 3000, Jared Finch, Tactical Snowflake, Son of Ander, Vanilla Bryce, Chris T, Kishan Lala, Amanda R, Hanky Panky, Tyler J, Damian Blues, Ashley White, Dick Cheney in 3-inch heels, Lalo Valesco, Particulon, Memfrez, Gorgeous Girl Mukes, Lauren, Unchrasmatic Boar, Sasquatch, Rhonda Stiletto, Midwest Marxist, Joe the Mailman, Gary from West Michigan, Shawnee GG, Juniper Not Jupiter, Stacked Crabs, Patrick Simpson, I Crowley, Urban Peach, Lord of Forlorn, Holt Forsyth, Dialectic Dreamer, Kevin Kasaya, Schnoodle, Booty Snakes, Erica, Krusty Krab, Dewfairy, Chelceratops, Austin Lima, Lane Waltz, Azim Fitta Hussein, Brooklyn G, Noverk the Dastardly, Gold Thorn, and my mom. Thank you all so much for supporting the show on Patreon. If you've listened this long and you want future commercial-free episodes, become a patron.
I know exactly.
If your name's not on this list, get your name on this list.
Exactly. We want to read it out.
That's right.
I want to say it.
I do.
Come on now.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Have a great week.